The psalmist says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Anyone who has ever done any research into the human body knows that he is telling the truth. We do not even yet fathom the complexity of that which God has given to each one of us in the house in which His Spirit lives. And it is not uncommon, nor is it strange, that we should be concerned about the health of these bodies. The whole issue of holistic health, which has swept into our culture like a tidal wave, is born out of the concern that people naturally have for the well-being of their physical body. It is far more with us than most of you probably know. Before we actually get into the concept of holistic health, it would be a good idea for us to decide how we should spell it. If you spell it W-H-O-L-I-S-T-I-C, Jack Gordon, who is the editor of the Training magazine, says that if you're spelling it that way, then you could bring in a motivational speaker who could tell you how to accomplish anything you set your mind to do or anything that you decided you want. That's how you spell holistic when you're talking about human potential. But if you spell it with an H, then you can bring in an Apache medicine man and a live eagle. That's holistic. In other words, the concept of holistic health spelled with an H means different kinds of healing that have to do with the whole person. Holistic medicine, to say the least, is a very complex and controversial subject. It includes, among other things, quasi-medical therapeutic techniques. It is involved in an emerging force in medical practice based on the concept that the body, the mind, and the spirit are interconnected, and that true health, if we really want to have it, is involved in being whole. The word itself comes from the word Halen, H-A-E-L-E-N, and that means resulting from the proper interaction and alignment of the body, soul, and spirit. It's a kind of wholeness that people talk about when they speak on the holistic subject. Marilyn Ferguson, the guru of the New Age movement, is enthusiastic about the concept of holistic health. She is seeing it become more and more legitimized by federal and state programs, endorsed by politicians, urged and underwritten by insurance companies, co-opted in terminology by many physicians, and adopted by medical students. A trip to your local health store will probably reveal a score of books covering Chinese medicine, self-hypnosis, macrobiotics, biofeedback, meditation, and other practices billed as restoring the whole person. But just what do they mean when they talk about being whole, holistically whole? Holistic health is often associated with the New Age movement because many of the concepts that are involved in holistic healing are compatible with the things we've already learned about the New Age. Holistic medicine tries to treat the person as a whole being. Holistic healers refuse to limit their preventative and curative efforts to the body alone. Their practices treat the whole person as a body, mind, and spirit unity. Acupuncture, herbal medicine, biofeedback, yoga, iridology, homeopathy are all considered to be legitimate forms of holistic medicine. Community and mental health centers in the state of New York have used Spiritism as a supplementary healing system since the mid-'80s. And in the Southwest, the Navajo shamans have been allowed to enter hospitals to work with Native American patients. Often they use herbs and chants in the hospital while they're dealing with their patients. The cause of holistic healing probably jumped the biggest notch in your lifetime and mine as the result of the writing of Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins was the well-known editor and publisher of the Saturday Review. And several years ago, when he was writing in the New England Journal of Medicine, Cousins told the whole world how he was apparently cured of a strange Asian disease by megadoses of love, laughter, vitamin C, and the will to win. Every other method failed, he said, until he began viewing his favorite film comedies from his hospital bed and reading books on humor. The belief system, said Cousins, is a prime physiological reality. The greatest force in the human body is the natural drive of the body to heal itself. But that force is not independent of the belief system, which can translate expectations into physiological change. Holistic health practitioners are not very complimentary when they speak of Western medical practices. They refer to Western medicine as reductionistic. By that they mean that it has lost its holistic vision and consequently reduces persons to mere bodies, machine-like assemblages of separable parts. Disease is viewed as a mechanistic malfunction remedied by chemical or surgical intervention. Spiritual concerns, they say, to a Western medicine person is banished from health considerations altogether. In other words, they're critical of what you and I know as traditional health methodology because they say has no concern whatsoever for anything except the body. Of course, if you've ever gone to a Christian doctor, you know that isn't true. But that's how they view all of the medical practice. And of course, what is happening in the medical world is certainly contributing to the rise of holistic health and holistic medicine. Rising malpractice suits, dangerous prescription drugs, that which is referred to as iatrogenic doctor-caused illnesses, soaring costs have caused more and more people to question modern medicine. New Age medicine people like to quote Voltaire of old, who once said, "Physicians pour drugs of which they know little to cure diseases of which they know less into humans of which they know nothing." Now that is obviously an overstatement. It is not true, but they love to point their finger at conventional medicine because they see all of the problems that are associated with it. In order for us to try to get our arms around this subject and understand it, I'm going to follow 3 lines of discussion, perhaps 4. First of all, I want to share with you the precepts that underlie the holistic concept of healing. And then I want to tell you about some of the practices that fall under that heading. Then I want to tell you some of the possibilities of why some of these practices work. And then I want to give you some principles by which you may judge whether a thing belongs solely to the New Age movement or whether it may be legitimate. And one of the things I need to point out at the very outset, folks, is that simply because New Age people incorporate something under their huge umbrella does not mean that it belongs to them exclusively. They often take things that are legitimate and they claim them for themselves, when in reality they are simply neutral. And many times the things that holistic health people claim for themselves are, by virtue of their ability to function and work, are legitimate means of helping the human body. The best book that is available on New Age medicine, in fact the only definitive work that I have been able to find in my research, is a book entitled New Age Medicine, A Christian Perspective on Holistic Health. It was written several years ago, and it outlines much of that which is going on in that field today. Even though this whole concept is not a unified approach or a movement, Paul and Terry Risser and John Weldon, who wrote the book that I just mentioned, have put together 10 dominant themes that characterize those who are holistic healers. As I said already, I want to reiterate, not everyone who follows any of these precepts would necessarily be qualified as a New Age holistic healer. There are many good people who embrace some of these ideas, but when you take all of these precepts and put them together, they form the foundation upon which holistic healing is built. The first idea, or the first precept, is the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The word holistic stems from the Greek holos, meaning whole or entire, a relative of the root for our words to heal and health. It was coined originally in 1926 by South African Prime Minister Jan Smuts in his book Holism and Evolution, a philosophical work not directly concerned with medicine. Smuts' now famous word has been applied to several fields. For instance, you can sometimes hear people talk about holistic psychology, holistic law, holistic tennis. Holistic health begins with the idea that a human being is more than a congregation of cells, a collection of tissues and organs, or even a functioning physical body. A person, according to this precept, is body, mind, and spirit, and the concept is often illustrated in their literature by drawing three interlocking circles and labeling these terms, body, mind, and spirit, and then in the center, where those circles interlock, they show that that's the holistic view of healing. Fritjof Capra, who we referred to many times, who is the physicist writing for the New Age movement, criticizes what he calls the modern biomedical model for concentrating on smaller and smaller fragments of the body and losing sight of the patient as a human being. The human being, he said, is more than a cellular or molecular mechanism, and to focus on these processes to the exclusion of the whole person is medical tunnel vision. And that would be a pretty fair statement representing the New Age holistic health view that, number one, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's their first precept. Number two, they believe that health is more than the absence of disease. That's precept number two. Vibrant health, according to holistic healers, and terminal illness are extremes on a cycle. Vibrant health, terminal illness. And the holistic health movement emphasizes that no one should be content to be in the neutral place. In other words, health means, to them, it means feeling fine, being energetic, integrated, self-actualized, and productive. George Leonard, once the senior editor of Look magazine and author of Education and Ecstasy, argues, the conventional physician considers a person well if he has no symptoms and falls within the normal range in a series of diagnostic tests. Yet this quote-unquote well person might smoke heavily, take no exercise, eat a bland, sweet, starch diet, and impress all who meet him as glum, antisocial, and emotionally repressed. To a new medicine practitioner, such a person is quite sick, the carrier of what biologist René Dubos calls submerged potential illness. In the new medicine, the absence of overt disease is only the starting point, beyond which a whole world of good health beckons. To a holistic healer, health is a state of being in which a person is integrated in all of his levels of being, body, mind, and spirit. The attainment of this state of integration brings into an existence an entirely new person, according to their literature, different from the person that existed before, and at a new plateau of existence. Now listen carefully. I submit, says one writer, that this new state of being of an individual is a state of self-realization, of self-actualization, or enlightenment. End of quote. Have we heard those terms before? In other words, holistic health is just another means of raising the individual to that level of higher consciousness which is so much a part of the Hinduistic belief system and the New Age movement. Principle number 3. Individuals are ultimately responsible for their own health or disease. Those who teach holistic health correctly insist that a patient participate actively in the healing process rather than passively being a biological battleground. Some practitioners even dispense with the term patient because they feel it has connotations of helplessness and passiveness. They prefer to use the term client and to think of the physician or healer as a co-worker and a teacher and a guide. Once again, Marilyn Ferguson refers to the innate healing power of the body when she quotes an anatomist as saying that the healer inside us is the wisest, most complex, integrated entity in the universe. She adds that we now know there is always a doctor in the house, referring to the one she says lives within us. In other words, if you take this and you merge it in with the New Age concept, it is back to this whole idea that we can create our own reality, that we are totally in command of who we are, that we are godlike, that we have powers beyond the normal, that we have paranormal powers to care for our own physical body. The ramifications of that principle and precept are quite alarming when you deal regularly, as we do in the ministry, with people who suffer from ailments they have had most of their lives that have nothing to do with their ability or lack of ability to control their disease. Precept number 4, natural forms of healing are preferable to drugs and surgery. That is very heavily woven into all of the literature in the New Age movement and in holistic healing. They capitalize in this whole area on public disenchantment with the unsavory byproducts of modern technology. They like to recite recent exposés of over-prescription and unnecessary surgery by some physicians. We know that some of that does go on. Holistic health proponents proclaim the benefits of natural self-healing. A recital of the latest adverse drug reaction statistics is invariably included by at least one speaker at every holistic health conference. Precept number 5, any method of promoting health or preventing disease has the potential for being holistic, but some methods are more holistic than others. Many people in holistic circles have rightly observed that becoming a healthy person is a process which may involve a variety of therapies and lifestyle changes. In the holistic movement, there is an underlying disdain for all allopathic medicine. That's the generic term for conventional medicine, allopathic medicine. And a concurrent leaning toward therapies which are certainly alternative, but many times are very questionable. Some of this learning represents an aggressive pragmatism. In one of the pamphlets that I read, they actually said, try anything if it will help. Now that's real great guidance for someone who's trying to get well. Beyond this, they exist in an environment which practices and incorporates new consciousness, mysticism, occultism. All of this is flourishing alive and well in the holistic movement. If you want to borrow my paper, you will see that so readily. When you look in the holistic newspaper that I have in my folder, side by side you will see ads for different methods of healing, along with opportunities to go to TM classes and all other kinds of higher consciousness training. It's all incorporated under the umbrella of medical healing, because you see, they're dealing with the mind, the body, and the spirit. And so if TM helps your mind and nutritional methods help your body, all of that's very important to the whole person being healed. And that's sort of the underlying presupposition of the holistic health movement. Precept number 6, health implies evolution. Once again, evolution is at the base of much of the New Age philosophy. While it is one of the key words in the holistic glossary, it is not used in the sense that Darwin would have used it. In fact, it is a variation on some ideas from back in the 1920s. The 1974 Encyclopedia Britannica defines holism as the philosophical theory based on the presupposition of emergent evolution, that entirely new things or wholes are produced by a creative force within the universe. They are consequently more than mere rearrangements of particles that already exist. What we are all evolving toward, says the holistic healer, what we are all evolving toward is far more than just improved physical health or psychological well-being. We are, in fact, they teach, undergoing a psychic transformation marked by an increasing awareness of the creative force within the universe and a blossoming acquaintance with its power. We are entering a new age, say the healers, which is to be marked by an awareness of realities beyond our everyday world. And medicine is but one of the many fields which are on the verge of profound change. Jonas Salk, inventor of the polio vaccine, made this clear when he spoke at a holistic conference, and he spoke of the historical and evolutionary significance of the holistic health movement. Quote, he said he anticipated that the evolutionary holistic health movement would facilitate the next stage in human evolution. End of quote. I'd like to answer that with a bit of poetry that I found from the pen of C.S. Lewis, who playfully ridiculed this belief in evolution when he wrote, "Lead us, evolution, lead us, up the future's endless stair, Chop us, change us, prod us, weed us, for stagnation is despair. Groping, guessing, yet progressing, lead us, nobody knows where. Wrong or justice in the present, joy or sorrow, what are they? While there's always jam tomorrow, while we tread the onward way, never knowing where we're going, we can never go astray. End of quote. And that's sort of where evolution takes us, on an endless journey that nobody knows where. Precept number 7, underlying the holistic health movement, is that to understand health and disease, we need an alternative model, one that is based primarily on energy rather than matter. Now listen carefully, because of all the stuff I'm going to say to you, I'm going to get off of these principles in just a moment. This is the most critical, because this is what is underneath most of the holistic healing methods that I have examined in my study this past week. The idea is that there is this unseen energy that flows through the human body that is a part of the greater cosmos, and that in order for us to promote healing, we have to get in control of that energy. And if you've ever been to some of the rather bizarre holistic health centers where they do things that you have never heard of before, where they don't even touch the body with their hands or instruments, but place their hands over the body, hoping to somehow redirect the flow of energy in the body, you will understand that underneath all of that is this concept that illness is not a physical problem, but it is an imbalance of energy in the body, and as a byproduct of enlightened consciousness, we can be cured and our energy can be reestablished and reorganized. We're back to the crystal power and all of this other stuff that we've talked about so far before. The whole concept of holistic healing is based on the idea that spiritual energy supposedly flows from the universe into all of the living creatures, circulating within them in an orderly and discernible pattern and flowing out again. And that is nothing more nor less than Eastern mysticism. It is Hinduism in its rawest form. These Eastern religions refer to this by different terms. The Chinese call it the dynamic energy field Chai. The Japanese call it Kai. It is known as prana by the yogis and by a variety of names in other cultures. The New Age strategists will never refer to it by any of those names, because they know that would alert the practitioners to the fact that they were dealing with Eastern mysticism. So they call it energy or bioenergy, because it avoids all of the Eastern mystical connotations and keeps the people unaware that they're dabbling in the occult. Whatever you call it, it is not a recognizable force like gravity or electromagnetism. It is generated by the interplay, according to the New Agers, of the yin and the yang, which represents the male and female dimensions in the Eastern religion of Taoism. So in Eastern medicine, pain is understood not as a symptom, but as an accumulation of energy in some part of the body, which, if it can be correctly redistributed, will restore health harmoniously, balancing the body, giving back psychic energy, and correcting all of the organic wrongness. That's how they heal, according to their understanding, redistributing the energy. I can tell you some stories about some things that I inadvertently got into several years ago with one of my children, because it was recommended that it was possible that it could help that child. And I knew when I came out of there something was really wrong. I had never seen anything quite as crazy as that in my life. And I'll tell you, it was David, my oldest boy. He'd had an athletic injury, and somebody suggested we go to one of these places. I won't go into more detail, but I tell you what, we laughed all the way home that we had actually submitted to that. But now I know it wasn't a laughing matter. I just didn't understand. Principle number 8, or precept number 8, underlying the holistic health movement, is the idea that death is the final stage of growth. And once again, this is all integrated with reincarnation and all of the other things that we've already learned about. The unbounded optimism of holistic health would really wear thin in the face of human suffering and terminal illness and death if it weren't for the recent emergence in many quarters of the idea that death is simply an opening into a new vista of life. And if you believe in reincarnation, it's just the transfer into a whole new cycle in the karmic generation of good and evil in your life. Precept number 9. The thinking and practices of many ancient civilizations are a rich storehouse of knowledge for healthy living. In keeping with its distaste for Western technology, holistic healers, new medicine tend to view certain ancient cultures as particularly holistic, integrated, in tune with the universe, etc. We don't have to ask which ones because we already know. They're really into Indian methods and Eastern methods of healing, and they study them now far more than they study the technical books of modern medicine, which are a part of the academic preparation of traditional medical people. Principle number 10 and last, holistic health practices may be integrated into the mainstream of life. They must be integrated into the mainstream of life through influencing public policy. And if you read the papers at all carefully these days, you will discover that more and more pressure is being placed on public agencies to include what we used to think were bizarre methods of healing under Medicare and health care plans, and they are being so pressured by lobbyists in Washington that they are giving in, so that that which would never before have ever qualified for insurance or anything else is now being pressured to cover the cost of many of these practitioners who have absolutely nothing to do with making the body well. So if you write down those principles and think about them, and if you review them, you will see how they play into some of the different practices. And I need to say something right here before we go to this next section. I know some of you are sitting out there worried that I might step on your toes because you're involved in some things and you wonder. Let me tell you something. I don't have all the truth on this issue. I'm still learning and studying, and there are many things which are really neutral methods of helping the human body, but if they are incorporated with some of the things we've already learned about, then they are not neutral anymore.